Joe, you are in New York City?
I'm in Chicago.
You're in Chicago.
Yeah, the Windy City. That's where I am. Yeah.
Awesome. Are you still facing issues with the sharing of screen?
Let me see if this works, folks.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so unused to Zoom.
Okay.
We use Teams for everything, you know.
Oh, yes.
Does that
Is
work
it a
okay?
company? Is it a company? Yes. Yeah.
Ah, great.
Yeah, it's good.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, we'll give it a maybe another minute or so just for people to join, then
Yeah.
we can get going.
We have people joining us from Canada, Oklahoma, Las Vegas. So,
Las
nice.
Vegas. Awesome.
Pennsylvania. Oh, more people from Canada, Detroit. This has been a long time coming though. We have been speaking for a long time, right? Like for about this webinar. It's been quite some time.
Yeah, I mean it's exciting. It's exciting to be here, and I can kick things off now. I mean, as you say, it's a hot topic and a lot of interest in AI. And I'll just kind of introduce myself for everybody here. Hopefully now you can see my screen here. So I'm Joe Leslie. I'm the global AI L&D lead for Golin, who are a PR and communications company. I've been in L&D for 20 years, and probably like many of you on this webinar today, I almost got kind of swept away a little bit by AI. So in my previous role, I worked for Publicis Group, one of the big advertising holding companies, and I was there for about 7.5 years. And my job role there was the L&D platform lead, but it kind of evolved into an AI specific role just because Publicis, and this is actually layered into the talk a little bit, was so focused on AI. So it's interesting to see how a lot of our roles in L&D, traditional L&D roles, are kind of evolving to encompass AI. That's kind of an interesting development that we all kind of deal with. Obviously, it's a big question in society more broadly, not just in L&D. And on that topic, get your typing fingers ready, folks, because I'll kind of open up with a bit of a question for the chat here, which is in one word only. Let us know how AI is making you feel. You can be as honest, please be honest, be as honest as you want about this. If it's positive, if it's negative, if it's somewhere in between. I'm interested to hear what you're feeling about AI. Um, so let me know what your thoughts are there. That's awesome. Thanks for thanks for doing this. I'm going to say that the word I the word that really leaps out to me of all of these is overwhelmed. I think it, like all technology, AI is overwhelming in both its positive and its negative. It's kind of like all new technological innovations are kind of amplifiers, aren't they? They make the good better and they can make the bad worse, right? So it's quite an interesting kind of thing for us to wrestle with, right? And what if I told you, though, guys? What if I told you that AI is not actually a tech training? How would that make you feel? Is that is that a hot take? Because obviously AI is by definition technology, right? Clearly, it's a form of technology that we're engaging with here. But what we're going to talk about today in this webinar is from an L&D strategy perspective, really it's better to see AI more as a kind of broad societal shift than a technological advancement. And I'll kind of go into that during our talk and how as companies and how as L&D leads, we can adapt to that, right? How we can adapt to that shift. And I'm going to present a kind of another maybe hot take here, a bit of a bold statement coming from our friend Sundar here. this is a kind of a quite a grandiose statement that he makes where he says AI will have a more profound impact than fire, electricity, and the internet. Let me know, guys. Keep the chat open by all means. I'm intrigued to know what you're thinking about this. Does this seem just like hyperbole? Is this a crazy thing to say? How do you kind of feel about this statement? How does it resonate with your experience? Feel free to again put in the chat how you feel about that, and if you think it's absolute madness, you can put that, or if you feel there's something in it, because what I will say to kind of add to Sundar's perspective here is that AI now is recognized as being one of the GPTs, and that isn't as in chat GPT, that's as in general purpose technology. There have only been about between 20 and 25 of these ever in human history. One of them is fire, that's referenced here, and electricity, and also more modern innovations such as the personal computer, the internet, and obviously thinking back to the printing press, writing. These are all GPTs, and AI is now considered to be one of these GPTs, such as its kind of societal impact. So, whereas this statement may seem hyperbole, maybe there is something in that. We'll have a bit of fun here in the next slide because I'm going to kind of contextualize this a little bit. AI is this obviously this huge technological advancement, but throughout history, we've had other technological advancements which have kind of interfered with, impinged on, and defined education and training throughout history. This could easily be a quote from today, couldn't it? If you look at this, it will implant forgetfulness. People will not exercise memory. They will rely on what is written. It is only a semblance of wisdom. This is actually a quote. You can see at the bottom there, a bit of a spoiler alert. This is a quote from Plato. And Plato wasn't talking about AI, right? For obvious reasons. AI wasn't quite around in 370 BC. What Plato was talking about was this thing I'm holding up here. He was talking about the invention of writing because Plato was a student of Aristotle and sorry, of Socrates, and you know those ideas that were perpetuated from Socrates, the Socratic method. Plato, Aristotle, and others were kind of wed to those ideas, and they were very resistant to technological advancement. So it's interesting to think that there's always been this kind of inherent resonance between technology and education, right? That goes way back before any of us were born, right? So that's an interesting idea. A few more here that I've put up. Check these out, guys, for some bizarre predictions, right? Because another thing about technology is that we're really, really bad as humans, as a species, we're really, really bad at predicting these technologies and the impact they're going to have. And there's a few examples here that you may be familiar with, right? If we start from the top left, you see that's Thomas Watson. Well, he said that there would only ever be five computers, which I think all of you on this webinar are kind of disproving that, right? Because we have a few more than five computers out there. Similarly, Alexander Graham Bell spoke about there being one major telephone in every city, every major city in the USA. I mean, again, maybe if you're being very honest, maybe these predictions are correct, but the scale is somewhat misjudged by these geniuses of their day. And even more recently, you'll see the one on the right. You may have seen this before. It's kind of gone viral many times, this, but it's actually from this century, believe it or not, this headline, as the internet may be a passing fad as millions give up on it. Well, again, I'm not sure quite how accurate we were with that one. So technology is infamously hard to predict, and there's actually this is a thing, right? There's an actual a law named after this, and it's called Amara's law. And Amara's law states that we overestimate the effect of technology in the short run, and we underestimate it in the long run. And those kind of examples that I just showed there perhaps testament to this, right? This is something that we can see examples of, and I'll kind of actually I'm interested. Use the chat, folks, if you have any examples that you can think of. We've just looked at underestimating technology in the long run. Have any of you ever overestimated a particular technology in the short run? I wonder. I'm going to hold my hand up and say I've definitely done this. I remember when longer ago than I care to wish to admit, but when I was a student at university in the UK, I loved mini discs. I see some young faces on this call, so probably not a lot of you even know what mini discs were, but they were actually a superior version of a CD, like a mini, as the name suggests, version of a CD. I thought these were awesome 20 years ago, maybe a bit longer than that. Um, and then the MP3 came out, right? So Steve Jobs and Apple they were looking at the paradigm shift of, away from physical media to digital media, and the MP3s, I beg your pardon, mini discs just kind of faded away, unfortunately. I've still got my collection somewhere, my parents' house in England. Can revisit that one day. But I think this is something we can all relate to, right? Is that technology is unpredictable both in the short term and the long term. So this law kind of helps us think about that a little bit. All right, folks. I'm going to talk a little bit about my role at Golin, and then I'm going to go into this a lot more in terms of how I can help you today, I hope, with your L&D strategy. So Golin are a PR company based in the US. Their headquarters are in Chicago, where I'm located. They're one of the biggest PR companies in the world, and they have a very ambitious idea when it comes to AI, where they want to be the first fully AI integrated agency. Now, this spans every employee, every role, every account, every day. It's a fully ambitious kind of transformation to being an AI integrated, fully AI integrated agency. So it's something that I'm very excited to be a part of, and I can bring some examples of that experience with you today. You may ask, like, how do we go around? How do any of you as L&D professionals, how do you go about something like that, right? How do you go about setting that business objective and actually realizing that objective of becoming fully AI integrated? Like, what does that process look like? Well, I'll kind of give you a few insights here into our kind of secret sauce of what we've been working on to do that. Um, I love if any of you have ever read the book, it's a fantastic book. It's called the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by Stephen Covey. It's a very famous book. Many of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with that. There's a really great mantra in that book, which is to begin or start with the end in mind, right? So any situation you're in as an L&D professional, think about what you want the outcome to be and kind of backwards engineer it almost from that, right? So we um we do that by identifying this ambition, fully AI integrated, but then we need to know the problem, right? So we look at the problem. And again, I'll give you a bit of a quote here from a famous historical person, which is Albert Einstein once said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. Often in L&D and just in life, I guess, we often rush to a solution without really fully comprehending the nature of the problem. So, my advice to all of you folks on the webinar today is to think about the problem. Start with, do you know at your organization what the problem is regarding AI, right? Do you have a workforce that is enthusiastic about AI? Do you have a workforce that is already using the tools? What is the sentiment about AI? It's hard to know this, right? So there's a way we can find this out. We can ask people, right? How's that for a crazy idea? We can ask people. So one of the first things I did in my role at Golin was I got a organization-wide survey, thousands of people, sent it out, and ask them a series of questions. And I can actually share those questions with you guys. They're not, secretive questions. It's the kind of questions you'd expect, right? It's like, what is your attitude toward AI? How often are you using the tools? Which tools do you use? What are the use cases? What are the barriers to using the tools? The kind of questions that you could ordinarily expect. It gave us some really fantastic insights that I've shared with you here, if you can see. And that one of them, just to give you a real quick example, employees were way more advanced than we expected. I wonder if it's the same for you guys at your organization, and I wonder if you know if that's the case. We tend to have quite a young clientele at our company because AI and communications, sorry, PR and communications, I should say, marketing, it just tends to attract quite a young clientele in the crowd. So maybe that kind of fed into it, right? Younger people are more used to these modern technologies, they're using them more in their day to day. Not to generalize too much, but I think there's something in that, and hence we see pretty good levels of maturity, AI maturity in our organization. I'll not go through all these, but I just want to give you a really kind of important one here. The third one: focus on not using the non-work approved tools. Now, this is a really great example for all of you as L&D professionals of a problem. I can guarantee you, I don't know all of you on this call. I don't know your organizations necessarily, but what I know is that some people at your company today, yesterday, tomorrow, at the moment, are using non-work approved tools for AI usage. Now, that doesn't mean that they're doing what Samsung recently did. If any of you saw this in the news a couple of weeks ago, where Samsung leaked a lot of their proprietary information to the public model of ChatGPT because they didn't use the enterprise firewalled account. But what they may be doing is, you know, they may be putting some information in there that you would insert, for example, ChatGPT, that you wouldn't want them to be, right? So it's very, very important that you know that all of your employees know which tools are approved for the workplace, how to use them, literally how to log in. How do I log into Claude? How do I log into Microsoft Copilot? And that they're doing that. And they're not going into, for example, ChatGPT, which you may not have an enterprise account. So I'd suggest to all of you, have a look at that, right? A survey is a really good way of getting that insight. We found this out from our employee survey, and I would urge all of you to think about that. That's a really easy, not easy, but a really immediate problem you can fix. Okay, so some ideas like about starting with a survey. And I mentioned at the last point there, efficiency was the main focus. And many of you may have seen this in your conversations about AI, where people still talk about AI as an efficiency tool, right? Oh, I saved 20 minutes by using AI for writing an email, or there are various shortcuts that people would use AI for. I actually think that detracts from the best use cases of AI. I think the best use cases of AI are not when you just save 20 minutes here and there, but when you have a strategic objective whereby you embed AI for that particular objective. And I've got some examples that I'll show you of that. But I just want to make this delineation, right? Is like it kind of may sound a little bit like semantics, efficiency, effectiveness. They sort of sound the same. People kind of maybe think they're the same thing, but they're not. And there's a great quote here from Peter Drucker where he kind of just looks at that dichotomy by saying efficiency is doing things right. Efficacy or effectiveness, depending on which one you want to use, is doing the right things. Because if you're being efficient, that might mean you're making mistakes faster, right? You could just be doing the wrong thing quicker. It's not a good look, right? That's not what we want to be doing. And you've got the badge here that says, don't rush me. I'm making mistakes as fast as I can. We don't want to be wearing that badge, right? So we want to be effective over efficient. That's our kind of main focus. All right, folks, I'm going to bring you back in here. I don't want to do all the talking at you guys. Definitely interested in your take here. We're going to kind of go back and look at some definitional ideas and then develop those into these use cases I talked about. See if you can have a go in the chat, folks. And I'm just going to mess around with my screen so I can see the chat. But what is artificial intelligence? Let me know have a go at defining it, folks. Have a go at defining artificial intelligence. Hopefully you can. Don't worry if there's no such thing as a wrong answer here. Just have a go. See if you can capture what AI actually is. Like what is it we talk about when talking? I almost give you the answer there. I have a nice, very short definition that I can share with you all, but I'm just interested if you wouldn't mind having a go at hitting on that. I'm sorry if you can see this. I'm just looking at the chat. I'll hide the chat so you can't see this. But I have a very simple definition. AI is the science of making machines smart. How about that? That's a 6-word definition. The science of making machines smart. It's quite an easy one to remember. That's not to say any of your definitions are wrong, but it's just a nice way of capturing it, right? That's kind of what we're thinking about. And this definition, by the way, comes from Demis Hassabis, who is the CEO of Google DeepMind. You be familiar with him. He's probably on the Mount Rushmore of AI geniuses. So if he thinks that's a good definition, then I'm inclined to agree with him. You know, it's a pretty good one. And what I would say as well, folks, when we talk about AI, I've got this graphic here just to show the kind of the nesting, if you will, and that generative AI is at the center of that. So typically, when we're referring to AI, we're talking about generative AI in the L&D space, right? So that's creating new content is probably a nice, concise way of thinking about Gen AI, creating new content, be that text, be that video, be that images, audio, whatever. And it's underpinned by machine learning, right? Machine learning is teaching machines to learn from data. Large language models are an example of that. We work with those. You all know what those are, right? So we don't need to get into that too deep, but often people get a little lost in these definitions. And you don't need, here's another thing, folks. You don't need to be, this is going back to my earlier point of AI isn't a technical training. You don't need to be an absolute expert in neural networks and know every single nuance of AI to know about this stuff. You really don't. If you've got a good grounding in the definitions of what we're talking about here, then you can really do a great job of understanding this and upskilling your workforce. You do not need to be a machine learning expert to be able to run a successful learning program regarding AI. So just want to kind of reassure you on that point. Okay, so let's just talk about AI generally a little bit more, then we'll get into these use cases. So one of the crazy things about AI is not just that it's so talked about, like we discussed earlier, right? It's everywhere. AI is all over the place. It's kind of, you can't escape it. It's on LinkedIn, it's on the news, it's everywhere you go. Look at the actual speed of adoption. It's not just that it's so ubiquitous, it's also the rate of adoption is incredible. When you consider this, if you can see on the graphic here, versus, for example, mobile phones, you think everyone's got one, right? Everyone's got a cell phone, but the adoption of ChatGPT is so much faster than even mobile phones and the World Wide Web and others, as you can see. It achieved 100 million monthly active users within just 2 months of its launch in November 2022. And honestly, there's a way of saying this really simply. It's quite simply ChatGPT, that I'm using as the example here, is the fastest growing consumer application ever. Fastest ever. So that's the scale of what we're talking about here when we discuss AI. And let's look even in our own folks, our own world, I should say, folks, because L&D, for L&D, it's a huge topic as well. Many of you may be familiar with this survey. It's called the L&D Sentiment Survey. It's run every single year by Egler Van Alsgatter and Donald Taylor. You may have seen this yourselves. They ask L&D professionals what they consider to be the most important topic in their world of L&D. And as you can see from the graphic here, AI is completely dominating this discourse, right? It's absolutely at the top by a long way, and it has been for the last sort of 3 years, to be honest. It's been completely dominating that discussion. And I'm sure all of you see this in your workplace as well. So in L&D specifically, this is a huge thing. And let me just kind of underscore that with a particular piece of research that really backs this up. Accenture did a report last year, so it's slightly out of date. I've got to make that caveat. This is slightly out of date. It's from 2024. They haven't done the updated one yet, to my knowledge, so I'm using last year's. Last year, I mean, these numbers are absolutely crazy, and they're probably less extreme now, to be honest. But in 2024, Accenture found out that 94% of workers wanted to learn AI skills. Now, probably all of you on this call could tell me it's not 94%, it's 100% or too. But at the point in time this was conducted, only 5% of organizations were delivering training at scale. And just to clarify what it means by at scale, that's sort of cohesive, organized learning paths as opposed to, the odd sort of resource here, check out this LinkedIn learning or, read this article, like a coherent, cohesive training program. And training's right at the forefront of this, guys. Over two-thirds of people said that training was the top barrier. So Actually, this AI readiness gap that this report discovered is very interesting to us as L&D professionals. You know, I've been in this world, like I said, for 20 years. I've never known something be so for L&D to be so integral in such a huge shift that we're seeing as we are in AI. I actually was at a talk. I've got a quick anecdotal example here. I was at a talk in Las Vegas probably about 2 or 3 months ago now, and it was Brandon Carson, whose name you might recognize. He was the chief learning officer at Starbucks and at Delta Airlines. He's now at Docebo, and he's a great guy, Brandon. And you might well be familiar with his work. He was delivering a talk when he said that whereas in his experience, L&D hasn't really had a seat at the table a lot of the time, and he said that now L&D and HR are the table. Like this is our domain, right? To dictate how we upskill our businesses with AI. We're actually leading the charge here, folks, which is fantastic for our industry and for us as professionals. We have this elevated status from AI, which is, I think, a great opportunity for all of you on this call and all of us. All right. Um, I'm going to introduce an idea here, folks, as well, just to build on that. So that's enough of like the background. We kind of get it with the ideas, but how do we actually go about upskilling our people? This is the main focus for my talk today. How do we do that? What's our strategy? What is our strategy for upskilling our teams on AI? Well, I have a kind of a terminology that I'll capture here, but before that, I would want to show you the advertisement on the left. The image here is for Steve Jobs in 1980, talked about the personal computer being a bicycle for the mind. So the personal computer is another of these GPTs that we talked about, right? And why is it a what does this idea mean, a bicycle for the mind? Well, a bicycle can't work unless there's a human on top of the bicycle, right? Riding the bicycle and directing where it goes. It's a really great analogy for technology, isn't it? It's same with the personal computer. It doesn't decide things for you. You decide where to go. You decide what to click on. You decide, what happens. And it's very much the same with AI. This is an extension of this idea. And I've kind of captured this with a little terminology I've used here. This was actually my boss that used this. I'm not going to claim credit for it, but my boss, Jeff Beringer at Golin, he uses a great term, which is intelligence augmentation. So you're taking AI and you're actually flipping it to be IA, intelligence augmentation. What does that mean? This is at the core of everything we're going to talk about in the remainder of this webinar. It's the combination, the amalgamation of humans and AI. Humans are bringing things that AI just doesn't have, right? It doesn't have judgment, empathy, and nuance like we do. All of you on this call have an advantage over AI, right? In that you're human. You can actually do things. You can show empathy and have critical thinking and show nuance and emotional intelligence, things like that. AI can imitate these things, right? It can kind of grasp those concepts, but it just doesn't have them, right? It just doesn't. But at the same time, of course, AI can bring superior data speed, memory processing, right? Like there's no way we can compete with the physical capacities of AI in those domains. But together, we get this amplified impact. So what I'm trying to do here is remove that kind of false dichotomy that we sometimes see about humans versus AI. It's often presented as kind of an adversarial thing, isn't it? It's got humans here, you've got it's versus AI. And I don't think that's a helpful framing of this. I think what's great is to think about how we can work together. And that's at the center of all this. And I'm gonna give you a few examples now of where this has happened, and then I'll go into the actual strategy that underpins these examples. Okay, so let's give you an example. My previous company, Publicis Group, where I worked for over 7 years, in 2018, they made a very, let's just say, a gamble, right? Like they took a business decision that was a little bit of a risky decision because in 2018, Publicis was not the leading advertising holding company. Um, but what they decided was to go all in on AI, which was in its very infancy back in 2018. And they worked with Microsoft. This is Satya Nadella, you'll probably recognize in the picture, and Artur Sadoun, who's the CEO of Publicis Group. They basically decided, right, Publicis decided we're going to launch this AI platform, and that's going to be our business model. We're going to go all on AI. So for over 100,000 people in over 130 countries, this was their strategy to build an AI platform in 2018. And initially, it wasn't going particularly well for Publicis Group as a result of this. You can see here, this is kind of a comical headline. This Marcel, you suck. Marcel is the name of the platform. Sorry, I should have said that. It's called Marcel. That's the branding of the AI platform. And the sentiment was, this is not working. This is what is this? I mean, the technology just wasn't quite there in 2018 as it is today, but the infrastructure was there. So anyway, initially not going great. This is kind of a story in three acts. So this is the second act. It's going badly. But let's see what happened after that. We go fast forward to 2024, 2025. Publicis Group is leading the conversation in terms of the holding group at the moment. It has a huge strategic advantage as a result of its investment in AI. Let me tell you how that happened, right? What happened in 2020 is something that we all have an unfortunate kind of memory and experience of, which was COVID. During COVID, obviously, we all know what was going on there, and in terms of how as well that impacted business. So Publicis, they actually, because they had this AI platform, they were using skill taxonomies and various forms of data analysis with AI at the back end, and they were reassigning people instead of letting people go and making people redundant, firing people, however you want to say it. During COVID, what they actually were doing was reallocating people to different teams, different positions, because they had this skill data at the back end where they could see, hey, you know, Joe here is working on this team, but we can also put him in a different team temporarily during this time, and then it rolled out, and obviously over time things got kind of vaguely back to normal, right? So that resonated with people because they thought, hey, this actually works. There's something about this AI technology where we can where it helps us, and it helps save people's jobs. So that was a bit of a light bulb moment. And again, since then, actually fantastic investment from Publicis Group. And just to kind of summarize this, their revenue has gone up 35% since they invested in Marcel as the AI platform in 2018. So this is a good illustration of what can be gained from embracing these new technologies in a holistic and strategic way, which is very interesting, I think. Another example I'm going to provide for you is actually, you may recognize our friends here, Murf AI. They're involved in this one. This is a really interesting use case that I saw that kind of hits on the same idea. And the idea is that you are not just using AI as an efficiency saving mechanism, you're actually having it at the heart of the strategy that you're using. So here, Vertiv, this is the company that Murf was partnering with. They specialize in like power, cooling, and IT infrastructure for data centers. They're kind of a backbone that keeps servers running and prevents them from overheating. So that's their business. And they had a bit of a logistical training nightmare with 14 regional offices with inconsistent content and translations. I'm sure many of you on this call, this will resonate with translating across different languages, like across global teams. There was a lot of logistical challenges, and it was taking several weeks, 4 to 6 weeks through multiple vendors, and they were struggling to make the technical cooling solutions for these particular the work that they were doing for the service engineers. So Murf AI stepped in and partnered with a company here, and what we saw then is using their voice platform, enabling organizations to create professional voiceovers, translations, and multilingual content at scale. We saw that actually this strategy could be centralized together. So instead of a fragmented regional training, there was a 4 to 6 week translation cycle. They actually got that down to be a matter of hours, the translation, with higher completion rates. So this is another really great example, folks, of where partnering with these AI ideas and AI tools, not just as an efficiency saver, but as a central business driver, can really bring a vastly improved result. All right, so let's be a bit introspective here, all of you on this call, and have a think. from one being the lowest. One is, what the heck is AI? I don't even know what it is. Why am I even on this webinar? I don't understand anything. I don't know anything. That's the lowest. To five, the highest, which is where you're already doing this and you're a genius and you know everything and you are applying AI at scale. How AI effective is your organization, folks? Be honest about this, you know. I think it's really good to be introspective. Think about where you are as an organization. Um, and that again helps you identify the problems, right, that you're seeing with AI. It'll help you to find the solutions. And I see the chat's active there. Apologies, my screen is set up in a way I can't actually see the chat at the moment, but thank you. I see there's a lot of answers coming in there. And that's fantastic. Thanks for being engaged there and giving me your perspective. Appreciate that. So,
You
um,
help with the answers, Joe?
yeah, if you wouldn't mind reading just a few of those out of a general sentiment, that would be great. And apologies, this is my setup. It's nothing to do with the webinar. It's just how yeah, that would be great.
Most of them are two actually. Somebody says
Okay.
ish. Somebody says two and a half. There's a
Two and a
lot
half.
of two to three. Yeah. So nobody has given anything more than three so far, at least. Yeah.
So listen, that's in a lot of ways that's fantastic. One, because you're being honest, and I love that. That's great. And secondly, the remainder of this session, we're going to show you some ways we can get that up from two, two and a half, and so on, up and way up, right? I'm going to give you some more specifics into that. So thank you for your feedback there, folks, and thanks for that.
Ryan says too, the problem is more and more of our tools like Adobe and Articulate are using AI, and we have yet to explore these features.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually got a demonstration yesterday in my Chicago office. I know the Adobe team really well. I've worked with Adobe for 10 years. And actually one of the Adobe team was showing me the new AI innovations that are coming to Adobe Captivate. And I'll tell you, there's some awesome stuff going on there. I got a really good overview of that, and there's some great innovations coming. So that's part of a challenge, isn't it? It's hard to keep up with these innovations. It's one of the biggest challenges. But from Adobe, I'll tell you that they're doing some pretty awesome stuff in this space. Okay, so I'm going to help solve those twos and two and a halves, and we're going to get that up, folks. Right. So what we're going to do? Well, let's look at this idea from Ethan Mollick. Now, I'm going to tell you all, if you want a resource that's going to help you learn about AI, and I mean you individuals on this call versus you, I would suggest reading this gentleman, Ethan Mollick's book, which is called Co-Intelligence. I'm not attached to Ethan. I don't get any money from the sales, I promise. I'm giving this as a neutral reference. He's written a book called Co-Intelligence, which I consider to be the best overview out there of AI. So I'd suggest checking that out. Anyway, Ethan is a professor at the Wharton School, and I just want to share because he frames this really well here, and I kind of want to share this with you guys. So everyone wants to teach AI skills, but no one actually knows what those skills are as of today, let alone for the future. We can teach a bit about large language models and look at prompting, but what are people supposed to learn to make them AI ready? Okay, so that's kind of framing the issue here, right? That's the issue. What are we supposed to teach people as L&D professionals, right? So let's look at this. Think about this, guys. I'm sure many of you will recognize this. If you don't recognize this, don't worry. It's not, it's we can kind of go into it a little bit. Sorry, I skipped ahead there. It's called the Kirkpatrick model. Many of you'll know this. Now I've got a theory, guys, on L&D, right? As I said, I've been in L&D a long time. I think, and I work for a PR company now, so maybe I'm a little biased with this, but I've made this connection, right? I've got a hot take, and it's that L&D, it needs to be rebranded. It's not branded properly. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at this pyramid here, folks, you'll see that learning is only halfway up in terms of the output that we get from training, right? We talk about learning, but learning isn't the goal, is it, folks? If you think about it, right? Our goal as L&D professionals isn't for people to learn, it's for results. It's for impact, it's for behavior change, and it's for results. What do I mean by results? Look at the case studies I showed earlier with the two examples with Murf and Vertiv, and look at the Publicis Group example and what we're doing at Golin. These are where you've seen a manifestation of the training bringing results. And this is that famous ROI that everyone talks about, right? When we talk about, you always hear that term used, don't we? The return on investment of training. You find that in results. You don't find that in learning. Learning can just be information, like knowledge transfer, right? But if I might know something about AI, but how is that helping my company? It only helps if it drives behavior change, which is impact level 3, and results, which is level 4. So I think this is a really useful resource for us all. Even it's a well-known thing in L&D, but I like to think to the results. Well, here's a model for that. Now, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of excruciating detail here. Don't worry, folks. I'm not going to kind of spend 20 minutes talking about this, but I want to introduce this to you if you're not familiar with it. It's called the 5DI model. And what it does is it's basically a user-centric approach to learning design, right? And it's what makes this a little different than a lot of other models, like the ADDIE model, for example, is it has iterate. You see right here in the middle, it has iterate. So what we're doing with the 5DI model, and you don't need to necessarily know this model. I've got a few resources I'm going to share with you in a minute that have this already built in. So you don't even need to learn this. So don't worry. You don't need to, I'm not going to test you on this, but I just want to give you the concept. The concept here is that we define our learning and we go through these stages to deploying it, but we're always changing it and iterating it because as you guys know, and one of you even said in the comments recently, it's changing all the time, isn't it? The models are changing all the time, the technology's shifting, the advancements are so thick and fast. How do we keep up with that? Well, I'm going to tell you how you keep up with it. I've got a couple of resources for you. So feel free, you don't have to use these now, this minute. The deck will be available to you after the webinar. Check these out. Carve out 30 minutes in your calendar, tomorrow or late next week, whenever you can, and have a look at these resources, folks. I've got QR codes for you here. These are allowing you to utilize AI as a performance partner. So the first of which is a perplexity, like it's like a GPT, basically. What you can do with that is you can feed in your information about your company. So for example, myself, I work for Golin. They are a PR and communications company. We're a global company. We have X amount of employees. Our goal is this. I feed that in, and it's going to give you, when you do this for your company, it's going to automatically give you a learning strategy based on those parameters that you're adding there. So check that out. It's a really good resource that can help you define your learning strategy. Similarly, I have additional resources around 5DI if you want to learn more about it. Again, I have this is not benefiting me in any way individually. I just like that idea of 5DI from Nick Shackleton Jones, who's a very smart guy. If you've ever heard his name, he's written some great books on learning that I'd recommend to you as well. So anyway, check these out when you get a chance. I always like to share, takeaways from these talks. I don't just want to kind of give you guys ideas, but actually have something that you can work with. That's what I hope. Okay, so I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of this now, folks, because you're probably thinking we've talked a lot about AI and about how we want to get results, and we've looked at use cases. What do we do though, right? So now I'm going to get to that. You'll be relieved to hear we're going to get it. We're going to get into that, right? This here that you see on the screen is a learning strategy for upskilling AI. Let me talk you through it. And if there's any questions, if you guys wouldn't mind shouting out, at any point, you're welcome to ask any questions or put them in the chat, and I'll catch them. I'm going to leave a bit of time for a Q&A as well, so we can answer questions here. But first thing, I'm going to start from the top, folks. Right, we got to upskill our workforce first and foremost with the solid foundations of AI, right? You can't run before you can walk. You need to get the grounding correct in these AI essentials. Okay, what are those essentials? Well, here's one that we can use. First thing, company AI ambition. What do I mean by that? What is that? Well, in my training materials in our learning management system, the very first thing I have, the first thing that anyone sees is a message from our CEO, right? The very top guy at the whole company talking about why AI is important, why it's an important initiative, and why it's important to be upskilled on it. Now, if you do that, guys, if you don't need to get the CEO if it's hard to do that, I get it. I know this. I've been in this world a long time. I know you can't always get the CEO, but if you can get an executive, you can get someone who can give you visibility, impetus, presence, and create a momentum for your training. I think that's really important because it frames why people need to learn about AI and be trained on AI and get results from AI. So I'd suggest trying to do that if you can, folks. Next thing, what tools are you using? I mentioned earlier that we hear that people are using non-work approved tools, which is dangerous because you can leak information to the public model. Don't want to be doing that, right? We don't want to be, none of us want to be doing that. So what tools are approved in your tech stack and how do people use them? How do they log into Copilot, Claude, whatever it may be, ChatGPT and so on? Adobe Firefly. How do they use them? So we need training on the core tools. Prompting is a really important part of AI because it's how we actually interact with AI, right? So prompting is kind of underpins a lot of the ways that we interact with AI. So I think that prompting is more an art than a science. I don't have like really strict, like you need to follow these 6 steps to prompt. Like, no, I think if you have context and specificity with your prompts, then that's great. There's ways that we can teach that art form of prompting. So that needs to be a foundational training. And last one here, policies and ethics. What are your company's policies on AI, folks? Do you guys know what those are? Honestly, I'm not trying to catch you out here, but maybe you don't know where those are. Could you link now to your company's AI policy? Does your company have an AI policy? If your company doesn't have an AI policy, how do you govern what people are using AI for? So this isn't, as L&D professionals, we're not supposed to be the architects of the AI policy. That would be something that would come under like either the legal team or maybe HR. I'm not exactly sure. It depends on your organization. But find out where that is, link out to that, and maybe create some awareness as to simplify that policy and teach your people about it. Okay, next one. I'm going to talk about these role-specific trainings. Okay, now I'm a big believer, folks, that the best engagement tool, and this doesn't just go to L&D, this is something for life, right? The best way to engage anyone is with relevance. The best engagement tool is relevance. If you, like, I've got 2 kids, right? I've got 2 little girls. If I want to explain something to them, the way I do it intuitively is I talk about Disney or whatever they're interested in at the moment, right? I say, imagine this is Princess Elsa doing that, I relate it to what they're interested in. And you guys have probably all done this in your lives as well. If you're talking to a kid who likes soccer, you might be like, hey, think of Lionel Messi, how many goals he scored last season, if you're teaching math or whatever it may be. And we're as adults, right? We're the same. Why would you, let's use the middle one. If there's a creative director, right, who's creating content and coming up with all these new ideas for promotional campaigns, how would you teach them about AI or train them on AI by showing them data and analytics examples? That isn't going to resonate with them because that isn't their world. That isn't going to meet them in terms of their workflow, right? That's too hypothetical for them. You've got to give them an example that they can relate to and that resonates with them. So we create training materials for each job family, right? So, for example, for creatives, we have our chief creative officer providing training, and kind of partner with him, and he provides training around ideation process using AI, how to interact and prompt with Claude, and how to get ideas from Claude, and how to maybe say, that's not so great. I want you to reframe that. I want you to do that again. This is how we make training engaging, folks, is to make it relevant to our people. So that's what I mean by this role specific AI training, and take that example and apply that across several job families in your organization. That's what we need to hit on. So a lot of that requires that you partner with SMEs, right? Subject matter experts. Identify who are your strategists, who are your project managers, who are your creative directors, who are your account managers, etc., etc. Who's the best person in the sales team who you can have work on a training with that will get people engaged. Think about that. And then we apply that, right? Then we apply those learnings to the real world through client campaigns, new business, and also the next slide that I'm going to show you. This is an extension of our training, right? So a training program that I just showed you then, you can set that up in your learning management system. You can set that up in terms of how you distribute that training. Another aspect, it's kind of think of this as an extension or an offshoot of that more defined training program, networks and communities. So a network could be something like local champions who are, you see on this picture here, we have a Chicago AI MVP. So we're spotlighting people who are working really well with AI. We're elevating them and we're saying, you're doing great work here, like we're going to spotlight you. You're going to get some recognition and you're going to be, recognized for what you're doing. That's an AI champions program, right? Now that perpetuates because more people want to be doing that and it creates this network, right? So a network is more sort of like a hierarchy almost, like a strategically curated setup there where we can get more engagement on AI. And a community is slightly different. We kind of conflate these two often, but the focus is more on kind of collaboration. They're a bit more open and fluid and informal. And it could be something like a Microsoft Teams chat. That could be a community, right? AI discussion, Microsoft Teams chat. People put their ideas in. Hey, did you see the news about this new model of ChatGPT? Hey, what about this use case that we're seeing with AI and with Adobe Firefly and whatever. People sharing ideas and having a community. I'd recommend that you think about those guys. Think about how you can set those up as well. Okay, we're going into sort of the last what we got about 10 minutes or so. So I'll kind of finish up here just by showing at Golin, right? I talked about this earlier. Where this is the results part that I talked about with the Kirkpatrick model. We're seeing over seven AI applications per client, and it's over 100 brands. And now we have 81% of people using AI in client work, which is crazy, guys. 81% of people are using this. And we're even able to, the last bullet point there is the most important on the right hand side, 20% of organic growth tied to AI. So that's the return on investment that I was talking about. We're able to see the outcome of this investment in AI, which is really important. Um, in the last few minutes, and I'll kind of race through this a little quickly, just be mindful of time, but I'm really interested to know which skill you guys think is going to be most important. Again, there's no right or wrong answer, but which skill do you think will be the most important for AI upskilling in your organization? Which skill or skills would you focus on? Again, I'm afraid I can't see the chat. And again, that's my apologies. It's just my weird monitor
I
setup.
can help. Uh,
Thanks.
Prompting, AI prompts, prompting,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, prompting again, ethical
yeah.
considerations,
That's a good one. Yeah,
keywords,
yeah.
adaptability.
Love that. Love that. Adaptability is a fantastic one, and I'll go into this just to kind of close out here because this is important. And those answers are all great, by the way. Thank you for giving those. All right, I'm going to lead into this here. I'm going to set the scene. This is a slide from IBM presentation from 1979. I wasn't even born then. That's how long ago this was, right? Um, and it's an interesting one, folks. A computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, a computer must never make a management decision. It's a kind of a bit of a sci-fi vibe to that one, right? Now, why is that important? Well, we can't outsource our thinking to AI and our decision making to AI. And I'm kind of leading to the skills that are important here. And all of your answers are valid, by the way. I'm not trying to say that those answers are not correct because they're great input that you guys gave. But my kind of perception of this, and again, I'll leave you with these ideas, is actually a lot of these skills are human skills. If you see here how people are using Gen AI in 2025, it's not actually the technical side of things. If you look on the right hand side here, there's been a shift from the technical to the emotive. Most people are using AI. The biggest use cases we're seeing are actually creative human skills with AI, which is really, this is from Harvard Business Review, by the way. Check that report out. I've got the link in the deck. It's really great. There's another report that kind of ties into that I'll mention in a minute. But this tweet sort of sums this up. And honestly, guys, as I kind of close out here, this is probably, if I were to leave you with one idea, I want you to take this idea, which is from Kent Beck, who's a software engineer. He says he's been reluctant to try ChatGPT, but got over that reluctance. And now he understands it a bit better. So look at the bottom. The value of 90% of my skills just dropped to zero. The leverage for the remaining 10% went up 1,000 fold. I need to recalibrate. So, what that's telling us, guys, is that all those skills that you've built up throughout your career are really valuable. They've not just disappeared, right? AI isn't going to replace all those skills. The skill, like the human skills, the critical thinking, the emotional intelligence, those kind of skills are worth more now with AI than ever because there's this recalibration. That's the word I want to say, recalibration. You might not be creating the output anymore because AI can do an ugly first draft, right? But what you become then, you don't become the creator, you become the editor of that, right? And it's this kind of idea of a recalibration of those skills. So it's a very important idea that I want to leave you with here is this idea of recalibrating your skills. And I've got a couple more slides I'll kind of run through quickly. This one's a really, I'll do this super quick in kind of underscoring that example, right? In 1985, Microsoft Excel came out, right? Now, when Microsoft Excel came out, I did some research myself here. I found this quote. They said entire offices filled with bookkeepers would be eliminated because Excel, this new technology, would take their jobs, right? That was the idea in the 1980, mid 1980s. And there's an AI generated image of two 1980s people, which weirdly kind of looks a little bit like my parents, and it kind of freaks me out a little bit, but whatever. But anyway, as far as I know, guys, there are still accountants, right? That never happened. Their jobs just were recalibrated, less number crunching, more strategical work for accountants. So think that as analogous for the rest of AI, right? That idea. And this is backed up by the World Economic Forum skills for 2030. Again, most of these are human skills. I'll not go into this in detail, mindful of time, but most of these are cognitive skills, guys. Curiosity, lifelong learning, creative thinking, resilience. Someone mentioned adaptability. That's in there, right? These are the key skills that we need to focus on with our training. And I'm going to leave you on a bit of a sentimental note. This is my last slide. So these are my two daughters. I'm a girl dad, and they came into my office about 3 weeks ago for a bring your kids to work day. It was really, really nice. And anyway, my eldest daughter, Grace, there on the right hand side, is next to this quote that says, "Stay curious to stay relevant." And I think that perfectly sums this up for all of you on this call and for the future generations. We need to lean into our human skills and designing our learning strategy around those human skills using the ways that we've talked about throughout this webinar. So I will stop sharing and leave it on that nice note. Actually, I do have another slide, guys, for L&D resources. Check this out in the deck as well. But yeah, it links out to all these. I hope these are useful for you as well.
Awesome.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, and if
we
we
are
have time, we
open
can
for
maybe
Q-
ask a couple of questions.
yeah, we are open for Q&A now.
Yeah. I can see the chat now, guys. It was when I was sharing. So thank you to everyone who's been contributing to the chat. I'm sorry I wasn't able to, in real time, keep up with those. But if there's any questions, guys, please feel free to let me know. What I will say as well is that I mentioned it. These the deck will be available to you. So feel free to check out those resources that I shared. I hope that they're helpful to all of you. You know, one of the things I love about this L&D community is that people are very receptive to sharing ideas and sharing best practices. And I've definitely benefited from that myself throughout my career. So I'd love to help you guys. Um, I see Ryan asked a question there of how they're using AI in Captivate. So what they're doing there, Ryan, in Adobe Captivate, which, if for all of you who don't know that, is the instructional design tool. So there's Adobe Learning Manager, which used to be called Adobe Captivate Prime. That's the LMS. Adobe Captivate is the instructional design tool. So what they're doing is they're using AI through voice. generation and also through avatar generation as well as content creation through Captivate. I don't work for Adobe, so I don't want to plug them too heavily, but they're doing some great things, Ryan, and check those out if you'd like. I see Jessica has a question as well. Have you checked out Neil's Flaw? I haven't actually, I'm not familiar with that one, Jessica, but I'm going to make a note of it. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Awesome. Being mindful of time, guys. I know we only have like 1 minute to go. What I would say as well, I'm available on LinkedIn. I believe the QR code is included in this deck. You just look me up. My name's Joe Leslie, as you can see on the screen there. I'd love to connect with you guys. I always love to meet fellow L&D professionals. So please do feel free to reach out, and I'd love to continue the conversation. But Deborah, my friend, I'll pass back to you.
Joe, thank you so much for doing this. I can see that people are really happy with the webinar. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to host you, really. Guys, those of you who are looking forward to the recording, just keep an eye on the Murf LinkedIn page. I think it should be up within the next 24 hours. You'll have the recording whenever you want to go back and listen to Joe again. It'll be available for you. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Um, Joe, if you have any closing thoughts.
No, I mean, I guess I'll kind of hit on the tagline that we ended on there, folks, of just to stay curious with this stuff. You know, I know it's hard to keep up with all the different innovations that are going, but the best way is just to have that open mind about AI. And again, this is nothing without all of us and all our human skills and all of you great L&D professionals on the line. You know, you've worked throughout your career. We're just going to be able to get better and better at our jobs through AI. I have kind of an optimistic message about it. I know there are bad things about AI, don't get me wrong, but there's also good things, and I hope that together we can all get better as a community and you know, do better work moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for ending on such a sweet.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. This was a lot of fun.
Have a
Take
nice day,
care.
everybody.
Thank you.